Welcome back. Nice to have you today. Have you ever thought about photographing a bushfire? It is something that we don't often get the chance of doing. Yesterday I was very fortunate. It wasn't a very big bushfire, it was more like a burn off. I was able to get quite close, being careful not to put myself in harm's way, but I ended up getting a few very nice photos of this fire that was just raging through this small area. There was a lot of grass around and the fire was just racing up the tree. So today I just want to show you and give you some pointers, some ideas, if you ever come across something like this, how you also can take some very good photos. Now, like always, I use my camera in JPEG and in RAW. So the photos you're going to see here are JPEG photos, and at the end I'll just show a couple of RAW photos edited in Adobe Lightroom. This is a panorama here. There was about 8 shots taken. We can see the flames shooting up a little bit. There's no wow factor in it. So I walked across the road and got quite close. So this photo here that you can see, there's a few trees, there's a lot of foreground. There's just nothing there, it's just green grass. The fire was raging, I could hear it crackling and all that, but there's no oomph in this photo. All you're seeing is just a few flames, a lot of smoke. Now, in comparison, take a look at this image here. There's less foreground, there's less of that green grass. I've zoomed in and the fire is just racing up this tree. How did I take the photos? What were my settings? I was shooting in aperture priority. I could have shot in shutter priority because I wanted a fairly fast shutter speed so that I could have the flames licking, because if my shutter speed's too low, then what happens is the flames sort of blend in. I really want to sort that sharpness in the photos. And because there wasn't a lot of light around, I increased my ISO to 400. So I was shooting at ISO 400, f8. F8 gave me enough depth of field using my Nikon D500 and the Nikon 18 to 140mm lens. And because I'm shooting handheld, I had VR on the lens set to active, well, on. I'm at 140mm, so zoomed in quite close. My shutter speed was 1/160th of a second. That's all I needed. Higher than that, I would have needed to use a much higher ISO, and I didn't want to reduce my aperture too much. I wanted like foreground to background sharp. So we go back to this tree photo here, and it was shot at f8 like I said. Now between this photo here and this one, just over 1 second, and look at the difference. Can you see how the flames just flicker around in the bottom? This is also why you have to have your camera in continuous mode. I had in continuous slow, so I'm shooting at around 5 frames per second. You're going to waste a few photos, but you're going to get a better chance of getting exactly what you want. The fire just moves around so quickly that you can't just be looking saying, okay, that's it, this is what I want, because by the time your eye sees it and you press the shutter button, that's gone away. So it's basically you just hold the shutter down, you take half a dozen odd photos, and you're bound in those half a dozen photos to get 1 or 2 that are really good. And this is what I was doing for the time that I was there. I was only there for about 10 minutes. So this photo here now, I'm in landscape orientation. Most of the photos I took were in landscape orientation. And look at this, you can see the flames are just licking up that tree on the left, and there's flames shooting skywards in the center of the image. Less than 2 seconds later again, look at it. The smoke is coming quite quickly. The tree now is hardly on fire, and the flames are all died down. This here is a nothing photo, but the one before it, look at it, quite a lot of impact. Look on the right there, you can actually see through that smoke, so you can see some in the background, you can see there's flames further back. There's depth in that image compared to this one here where there's no depth. The smoke is just billowing. So there's 3 photos here. This is the first one, and look, the flames are just licking, but can you notice they're just starting to climb that tree in the center here. Although I was very limited when I was taking these photos, what I was really trying to pay attention to also was how I was framing the photos. Because the flames were just coming up to the center of the tree, I thought that putting it in the center really gave it emphasis, and you could see the flames shooting up the tree. Photo number 2, can you see, like, look, the flames are just shooting up the tree, and these flames were just rocketing along. It was just crackling. And look at the flames here on the left. They look like a person. It's a head and hair. Flames just flick out, and it looks like they're just standing by themselves. Look at this one here. This is so cool. This is, I feel, the best one. Look on the left there. There's like a flame. It's just mid-air, edited, this will look a really nice photo. If you're shooting in JPEG, you're using a Nikon or Canon camera, look at picture controls on your camera. I shoot in the landscape profile, but I've modified it so that there's a little bit more contrast, a little bit more sharpness, so that it's a very punchy image. And my white balance was set to sunny because it was daylight. If you're shooting in JPEG, remember a JPEG is a finished product. So I tried to get everything right in the camera. Now the next set here, these two, the fire is right up the front now. And you can see the grass down the bottom right. This is the last part and it's just about burnt off in this area here. The flames are shooting skywards. It looks really nice in this dead grass. 3 seconds later, the flames are dying down. And this is very common in bushfires because the flames won't always stay at a certain height. They'll die down, they'll pick up again. It just depends how much fuel is where the flames are. If I was putting some photos up on Facebook or social media saying like, oh, I just saw a bushfire, and I put photos like that, it would get people's attention. This is what you've got to think of. You've got to make your photos captivating for somebody to look at and go, wow, that's really good. So now because the fire was getting much closer to the road, I zoomed out. All those photos you saw were at 140 mils. This one is at 18 mils. But look, bottom left, there's a fence post. You can see the fence there, and look on the right there. The tree is quite dominant on the top right. There's a bit of branch hanging in the middle of the right frame. Although it looks good, I'm just a little bit too far back. I just zoomed in a couple of mils, I think from 18 to 21, and look at that. The fence post is gone. There's just a little bit of tree on the top right here, and it just frames the image quite well. Look at the fire. It's much easier to actually see the intensity of the fire. Look at the difference between, let's say, 21 mils and 140 mils. Can you see the difference? It's nice to have a couple of photos at this focal length at 18 or 20 mils because it gives people an idea of what the fire was like. But to show the intensity, the rage of the bushfire, then you've got to zoom in. You've got to be up close and personal with your images to get that wow factor without putting yourself in danger. Now before I left, I shot 2 sets of panoramas. One when I was on the side of the road where the fire was on, and then when I moved on the other side of the road, just before I left, I shot a second set of images for a panorama. So this was up close. You can see, like, we could see the trees and all that. We can see the Rural Bushfire Brigade on the right there. Looks really nice, and you can still see the intensity and the scale of the fire. Now this one here would be a good reference photo because you can see the length of the road. You can say, okay, well, this is the fire that I came across, and people would have a very good idea, the perspective of, okay, well, you know, this fire wasn't that big, but your photos were still quite good for the fire that it was. Now I'll just show you some of the raw files that I edited and how much extra emphasis, how much detail we can actually pull out from a raw file. So you might never get the chance of photographing a bushfire, but if you do, I hope this video has given you some ideas on how to get some wow photos if you're in a situation like this. If you liked it, give me a big thumbs up. I'll see you next time.